Over the last 35 years or so, Los Angeles has gone from having zero rail transit to having the busiest light rail system in the United States and the ninth busiest heavy rail system in the United States. At a time that many major American cities are struggling to build small extensions of their rail systems, surely the expansion of the system in Los Angeles, called LA Metro Rail, is something American cities can learn from, right? Or is it a positive model? After all, LA Metro Rail is often criticized for not going to enough destinations. And, furthermore, some of the busiest transit corridors in the LA area are either underserved by rail transit or not served at all. Thus, we get to the question I posed in the video title. Is LA Metro Rail's expansion a model for other cities to follow, or a mess that other cities should seek to avoid? To begin to answer that question, let's first look at the four ballot measures that got LA County to where it is today with public transit. After all, the ballot measures are responsible for a lot of the good and some of the bad. The first one was Proposition A in 1980. It was a half-cent sales tax dedicated to transportation funding, and the first time people in Los Angeles County passed a ballot measure in favor of public transit funding. The second one was Proposition C in 1990. It was another half-cent sales tax dedicated to transportation funding, with a particular focus on supporting projects developed with funds from Proposition A in 1980, as well as helping to improve and expand the rail system started with Proposition A funds. Then there was another sales tax measure for transit funding in 2008, that measure being known as Measure R. And then there was Measure M in 2016, which brought further transit funding through another sales tax measure. So, let's start with the good. First, thanks to its voters, Los Angeles County has established a steady revenue stream that would allow for the building of transit. Establishing such a revenue stream is something that cities much better established in the American transit world have often struggled to do. And LA County has shown that they can use that revenue stream, in their case, sales taxes, to improve transit significantly in a relatively short period of time. Consider the fact that sales tax increases have resulted in the LA area's rail transit system going from looking like this to looking like this in just the last 35 years or so. And the map is going to become even more filled in during the coming years. Now, is a referendum necessarily the best way to establish revenue streams for transit? I think that is worth debating. But the point is that, with the help of voters, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times, a revenue stream was supported for transit. And that revenue stream has been hugely successful at delivering vastly improved public transit to LA County. I think Propositions A and C, as well as Measures R and M, also show that there are some constituencies who support higher taxes if they know that their city or county will give them better services in return for those increased taxes. Not all constituencies, but some. This is something that politicians should take note of, given that some politicians are allergic to any form of tax increases. But, while there are some positive things that I've just said about these ballot measures, and the transit expansions in LA County enabled by those ballot measures, it's not all peaches and cream. Why? because some of LA's most important transit corridors are either underserved by rail transit or not served at all. I'm thinking of three corridors in particular: Wilshire Boulevard, Vermont Avenue, and Sepulveda Boulevard. It has taken literal decades for Wilshire to even start to get the rapid transit it deserves, while only a small portion of Vermont Avenue has a subway line, and Sepulveda won't even get any subway until the 2030s. Meanwhile, you have LA Metro rail lines running down literal highway medians. And some of it is the fault of the very ballot measures that I just praised for funding transit. Why? Well, the fact is that to have a county-wide ballot measure pass for transit, you'd need transit to have an impact on the whole county. It's not good enough to have transit impact only a small portion of the county. As a result, those crafting the ballot measures needed to have transit proposals that served large swaths of the county, even if some of those swaths didn't have as much transit demand as other parts of the county. And even if some of the highest demand corridors weren't included. This issue is perhaps best described by a quote from the Eno Center for Transportation, who talked about how Measure M in 2016 ended up succeeding. They said the following, quote, "Unless the geography of transportation aligns with the geography of political power, ballot advocates will be forced to balance those dueling imperatives. As a result, some decisions about what to fund, and especially the order in which projects get built, may be based on maintaining political support, rather than maximizing transportation efficiency. Transportation planners may dislike such concessions, but when finance moves to the ballot box, it becomes an all-or-nothing exercise." End quote. This assessment from the Eno Center for Transportation perhaps shows the pitfall of putting transit funding on the ballot. While some voters, perhaps even most voters, would be willing to support transit funding through increased taxes, voters would understandably want details on where that funding would go. And if you release the details and voters realize that the funding won't help them personally, then they may be less inclined to support the ballot measure, thus decreasing the chances of that ballot measure passing. Which it sounds like was something that Measure M sought to avoid, perhaps to a fault, given that this was actually what happened with the opposition to Measure R in 2008. Opponents to Measure R said that the West Side was favored too much, and that the San Fernando Valley did not get their fair share. The opposition was nearly enough to eclipse the threshold for that ballot measure failing, which was for the ballot measure to get under 2/3 of the vote. These ballot measures are a part of why LA Metro Rail's expansion has felt a little messy, rather than a model to emulate. But there's another reason why. Some of the blame can be summed up in one acronym: NIMBYs. NIMBY stands for Not in My Backyard. And powerful people with these NIMBY sentiments have definitely derailed transit over the years in LA County. The most famous example of NIMBYism in the LA area was the initial derailing of a subway further down Wilshire Boulevard, LA County's most important corridor. A subway down Wilshire was funded by the initial 1980 transit funding referendum. However, Congressman Henry Waxman derailed plans for the expansion of a subway further down Wilshire. As to why? Well, there was a methane explosion under a Ross Dress for Less in 1985, and Waxman seized on that situation to oppose a subway down Wilshire. As such, the most important transit corridor in all of LA County was stuck without a subway beyond Western Avenue. And it remained stuck without a subway beyond Western Avenue until earlier this year. But it's not just Congressman Waxman in the Wilshire subway. There was a 1991 bill that banned light rail in the San Fernando Valley, a part of the LA area that by itself has a population of over 1.8 million people. Remember how some opponents complained about Measure R not giving the San Fernando Valley its fair share of transit? Maybe this 1991 bill banning light rail in the San Fernando Valley was why that happened. Anywho, the law was only repealed in 2014, meaning that a part of the LA area with a population larger than Phoenix had, and has, a lot of catching up to do on rail transit. Of course, it should be pointed out that NIMBYism is not just an LA area issue. It's all across the United States. And yet, LA has managed to build more than other cities over the past few decades, despite the constraints created by NIMBYs in certain parts of the region. As to why, it helps that there are many corridors in the LA area where you could justify building rail transit. That helps because, well, if you have NIMBYs preventing rail transit in one part of the county, then you can simply turn your attention to building rail in another part of the county. And LA Metro Rail has done exactly that, to its credit. However, in a smaller metro area, where there may only be, at most, a handful of corridors where it makes sense to build train transit, you have limited options for other places where you can build transit if the NIMBY successfully oppose a transit project in one part of your metro area. Because of that, when thinking about the question of whether the rapid expansion of the LA Metro Rail is a model to follow or a mess to avoid, my answer to the question is that in some ways, it's neither one. Because, well, not many places in the United States are like Los Angeles the city or Los Angeles County. That said, I think that transit advocates elsewhere in the United States can learn at least 3 lessons from LA Metro Rail's rapid expansion. The first lesson is that a half-cent sales tax increase can take you a long way in terms of securing the funding needed for expanded public transit. The second lesson is that there are some places where the majority of voters would actually support increased taxes in order to fund transit. And it's not just Los Angeles County. Orange and Durham counties in North Carolina, home to Chapel Hill and Durham respectively, support a referendum to fund transit improvements through a sales tax increase. And the support was by about a 60-40 margin in both counties. Marion County, Indiana, which has Indianapolis, had a referendum that would improve mass transit funding with a small income tax increase. And that referendum passed by about a 60-40 margin. Well, the stereotype of the average American voter is that we don't want any tax increases at all, ever, without exception. These ballot measures show that there are some Americans who would actually support small tax increases if it went to improving government services, including improved public transit. So that's the second lesson. The third lesson is this. If you want to build a coalition for a winning transit referendum, you need to demonstrate that the improved transit will have an impact on a large portion of your city or county. That may come with some of the trade-offs I highlighted earlier in this video, though. These lessons show that while LA is impossible to replicate, we can still learn from the rapid expansion of their transit system.